Hi everyone, this is May Park. Today I'm going to show you how to create a one-layer watercolor card combining several floral stem sets from Altenew. In this video, I'll be sharing a couple of ways to watercolor floral images using Kuradake Gansai Tambi watercolor set. I'm also sharing the behind-the-scenes video of my card making at the end, so stay tuned. Here are the stem sets I'll be using today. Garden Treasure, Remember This, and Beautiful Day. These stem sets have coordinating dies, but I won't use them for my project today. I'm also going to use the Amazing New stem set for my sentiment and Crafty Friends stem set to dress up my envelope at the end. I already tested out the placement of my floral images on a piece of print paper. I always have A2 size print papers handy to practice my projects, so I don't waste my expensive Nina Solo white cardstock or watercolor paper. Since I'm going to watercolor my images, I'll be using waterproof black ink. You can use the Altenew black permanent ink or First Buy Onyx black ink for stamping. I just learned that Memento Tuxedo black ink is water resistant once stamped impressions dried. So I'll be using Memento Tuxedo black ink today because I want my outline images to look less intense, more close to the gray color. I'm going to use Artist Cold Pressed watercolor paper, which is my all-time favorite watercolor paper. I'm trimming my watercolor paper into 4¼ inch by 5½ inch using Timo's paper trimmer. I'll be using alternate acrylic blocks for my stamping. You can use the stamping position tool instead if you want to, but I don't mind getting imperfect stamping impressions for my card today. I'm going to pull out my stamps from each stamp set and store them temporarily on a plastic tray. That way I can grab my stamps quickly and I can also prevent my stamps from losing on my messy desk. I'm going to ink up the stamp with Memento Tuxedo black ink and stamp my first floral image onto the paper. Then I'm going to stamp the same image one more time on a post-it note to create a mask. You can use Inkadinkado masking paper if you want to, but this masking paper is kind of expensive and I don't see any significant benefit from using this masking paper. So whenever I do masking technique, I prefer to use a post-it note along with a removable adhesive to hold the mask in place. I'm cutting out the image on the post-it note with my scissors. I'm going to layer my post-it note mask over the stamped image on my watercolor paper, covering the image entirely. Then I'm going to stamp my second floral image twice over the mask, positioning the image partially onto the mask. Once I have finished stamping over one image, I'm going to remove the mask, place it over the next foreground image and continue to stamp. Masking technique is a great way to create illusion of depth, especially when you create a one-layer card. Because the image you stamp first is in the foreground and the second image is partially behind the first image. Masking takes time, but once you remove all the masks, you can see the beauty of masking technique. I'm going to continue stamping and masking until I finish creating my entire scene. Here comes the most fun part of masking. I'm going to remove the post-it notes to reveal my floral arrangement. Now it's time for watercoloring. Here I have my Kuradake Gansai Tambi 36 watercolor set, number 2 and number 4 round paint brushes, a jar of clean water, and paper towel ready on my desk. I create my own watercolor palette. I put a piece of white paper inside a clear sleeve. I'm going to search it for floral illustration on Google. This is one of my ways to find a color reference when I watercolor florals. It gives me an idea what color combo I should use for my flowers and where to add shading on the floral images. So I'm choosing this illustration and I'm going to use orange, pink, green, and blue as my primary colors. So I'm going to show you the first way to watercolor my images. If you have enough time or patience and you want to add more depth and create a realistic look of your floral images, this technique will work for you. I'm going to mix my orange paint with clean water and load my paintbrush with pigment. Then I'll be testing out the color on a scrap paper to see the actual color. At this stage, you don't want to add too much water to your paintbrush. I'm applying pigment toward the bottom of each flower petal. Please notice that I don't wet my paper first before I apply the color. Then I'm going to rinse my paintbrush with clean clear water and remove the excess water using paper towel. Then I'm going to go over the paint to diffuse the color using a wet paintbrush. I asked my followers on Instagram and Facebook the other day if they would like to watch me color with a normal speed or if they prefer a speed up process video. A lot of them answered they prefer normal speed so they can see my watercolor technique in details and see how the pigment moves on the paper when it mixes with the water. So today I'm not going to speed up the video until I show you the watercoloring process enough for my main two flowers. If you want to watch my video fast, feel free to click the speed button in the setting tab of the video screen on YouTube. To create a gradient look of the color, it's important to wash your paintbrush with clean water in between before you pull out the color. If you add too much pigment onto your image, you can pick up the color using a paper towel or dry paintbrush. As you may notice, I'm moving my paintbrush toward one direction. That's because I want to leave some white areas toward the end of each petal. While the color paint is still wet, I'm going to add more pigment for darker hue to add dimension and shading. I'm going to cover some areas of my watercolor panel using post-it notes in case I drop some paints on my white areas while I'm moving my paintbrush back and forth. When you apply a dry and more saturated stroke, you can put in color with just water. I'm applying a stroke using very little water and more pigment. Before the stroke is dry, I'm going to take a wet paintbrush and pull the color out from the darker stroke. You can pull the color quite far depending on how dry that initial stroke is. I'm going to keep adding layers to achieve the dimension and shading I want. This does take lots of time, but the results will be worth it. If you let the paint dry between applications, you will leave harsh lines between layers. If you don't like those harsh lines, you can soften the hard edges using a moist paintbrush even after the paint is already dry. If you make a mistake with your watercolors or you have some paint went outside of outline, you can fix it by adding some clean water on the paper and picking up the colors with a paper towel or dry paintbrush. Just paint in the shape you'd like to lift out using clear water and dab away the water with a paper towel or paintbrush. If you look at the real flower, you can see that the flower don't have only one color. So I'm going to apply some red color to my orange flower. Adding different color is a great way to create some interest to your image. I'm going to keep adding layers as I did the same for my first layer. Now I'm going to turn on some music and speed up the process so you can watch me color. I'll be back soon to show you the second watercolor technique. For my second main flower, I'll be using a very easy and quick watercolor technique. I'm going to pick up some pigment from my yellow watercolor pen with my wet paintbrush. I'm applying light color first for the base layer. You can start by wetting your watercolor paper first with clean clear water if you want to. Then I'll be bringing more colors to my flower image to add shading toward the bottom of each petal before the previous layer is dry. This time I'm adding more pigment and less water. It took me about 5 minutes to color this yellow flower image. You can stop here if you want to, but you can go further by adding more layers and dimension using more darker color. I'm going to turn on some music again and I'll be back once I'm done watercoloring. I decide to add more pigment along the bottom of each petal to add some shading. Then I'm going to watercolor entire background using watercolor wash technique. You can achieve more organic look when you use lots of water this time. I didn't plan to color entire background in the beginning, so I didn't tape down my watercolor paper onto the chipboard panel. My watercolor paper ended up warping as I applied too much water. I'm going to use my heat tool to speed up the drying time. I'll be stamping my sentiments from the Altenew Amazing New Stamp Set with the first fine onyx black ink. This time I'm using my mini misty stamping tool because I don't want to make a mistake on stamping. Here I have Nina Solo white cardstock measured at 4¼ inch by 11 inch, and I'll be scoring at 5½ inch using Martha Stewart mini scoring board and bond folder to make an A2 size top folding card. Then I'm going to mount my watercolor panel on the card base using Altenew glue tape. My watercolor paper got worked from watercoloring and heat tool. If you are not in a hurry to complete your card, you can place your watercolor panel under some heavy books overnight to make it flat. To add some interest to my flowers, I'm going to add some white dots on the center of each flower using white gel pen. To finish off my card, I'm going to decorate back of my card by stamping the sentiment and envelope image from the Crafted Friends stamp set using a black ink. I'm also going to make a matching envelope using the Altenew olive ink and Crafted Friends stamp set. Depending on which sentiments you use or where you stamp your images, the possibilities are endless. That finishes off my project for today. I hope this video tutorial inspires you to create a watercolor card with one of the watercolor techniques I shared today. Before I go, I want to show you how my craft desk looks like right after finishing my card. I use my iPhone to film my video and very inexpensive clamp to secure my phone onto my QB. I also love watching my all-time favorite show, Gilmore Girls, with my iPad when I craft. My craft space is part of our living room and it's not that big. But I can say it's way too big compared to my old craft space back in 2010. I started my paper crafting at the dining table with one storage bin. If you are interested in watching my craft room tour, please leave a comment below. If there are many requests, I plan to put it together in the near future. That's all for today. If you like my video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time with another video. Bye bye!